Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On the American calendar, I think it's on February 14th, we officially proclaim a day for love, which is a good idea. People need to understand love, and they need to be able to love. Now, in Turkish, there's a word for love, aşk. And aşk means a divine love, not an ordinary love. And in the world, love is usually involved with a reciprocal agreement. I will love you if you will do this for me. I will love you because you do this for me. Or I love you because I reap benefits from you somehow. God loves us all, yet God has everything there is. God is without need. And yet, without need, and without needing something reciprocal, He loves us. This is a different kind of love. This is an unconditional kind of love. This is a love that is beyond human understanding. Now, many of us are raised in loving households. Many of us are not. And as we go through life, we don't experience being loved. I'm sure you've all read the studies that babies, in order to grow in an appropriate manner, have to be held when they're little. And if they're not held, they're lacking as they begin to mature. As a matter of fact, in hospitals, they have volunteers who come to hug the babies for periods of time during the day so that they get this nurturing that they have to have in order to grow and mature properly. My teacher said one time that some of his students, his children, were in such trauma when they came to him that all he could do was hold them close to him and cure them beginning that way. So all of us need to experience unconditional love, and we need to get it from somebody. Allah, in His mercy, has sent people like my teacher to love unconditionally, to teach you how to love unconditionally, to create a place where you felt safe, where you could let go of all of your hesitations and allow yourself to be loved and learn how to love yourself. So he became an example of divine love, a love that was without condition and was there not for his sake, but for your sake. And we need to develop the ability to love for the sake of others. We need to develop the ability to recognize the God in each one of us and to love other people for the sake of that God who loves us all. This love is at the core of all things. It's at the essence of all things. The ancients have told us that Allah created earth out of love. He created man out of love. And he created man so that man could experience love. So we were put here to learn about love. Sufis are known in many areas as the lovers. The ones who love the ones they encounter. The ones who are here as a loving presence, not someone to scold, someone to denigrate, someone to make things difficult, but someone to love. And love exists always, just as God exists always. I was at the chiropractor a couple of days ago, and he's read a couple of my books, and he said, I want to ask you a question. And the question was, sometimes God's here, and sometimes he disappears. What happens? I said, well, God is always here, but sometimes there's too much of you. And that's how it is. When we can let go of ourselves, not worry about ourselves, not be entranced by ourselves, we have room for God. We have room for Allah. We have room for others. We have room to love. But when we are the major presence in our existence, there isn't room for anything else. So we have to learn not to take ourselves so seriously. And we have to learn not to take this world so seriously. To understand the truth of existence, it can only be done if we lift the veils that separate us from everybody and everything else. If we live an insular life where all our thoughts are about ourselves and all our actions are about ourselves, there is no unity in our existence. When we talk about unity, we don't talk about other people unifying themselves with us. Like, for instance, if we have an opinion and other people agree with us, all of a sudden they're in unity with us. But if they don't agree with us, they're not in unity with us. That's not what unity is about. Unity is greater than that. To get to unity, you have to be able to tear away the vanity of the world. The Prophet in a hadith said that everything other than Allah is vanity, which means everything other than Allah is not reality, is not haq. Haq is the Arabic word for reality. It's one of the names of Allah. So if we want to enter into haq, into reality, we have to understand the nature of unity. And it begins with love, and then it begins to being able to integrate with others and with everyone else. In northern Turkey, there's a city called Kastamonu. I keep talking about Turkey because I go there twice a year. And also, it's one of the centers of Sufism in the world. In the north of Turkey, there's a city called Kastamonu. And Kastamonu is the place where a tariqat, an order of Sufism called the Halveti order, started. And the Halvetis have they have a ritual that they go through that I don't know if it's unique to them, but it's unique. Two of them will sit in front of each other and look into each other's eyes until they disappear in each other and they can't tell the difference between who's who. Think about that. If you trust someone enough that you can disappear in them, you've entered a different level of consciousness. You've entered a different level of trust. You've entered a different level of unity. You've entered a different level of love. Now, we need to be able to do that, either now or later. We all know, La ilaha illallah. I do not exist, only Allah exists. What's that mean? It means eventually we will disappear into Allah if we are pure enough to disappear into Allah. So if you can become pure enough in this world to disappear into somebody else, you have begun the process of disappearing into Allah. And understanding this and knowing that you need to do this are very important for your own progress. Because not only do you need to be able to love and to be able to integrate others into yourself for the sake of Allah and for the sake of everyone, you need to do it for the sake of yourself. Because in order to purify yourself so that you are worthy of integration with Allah, you have to become pure. And to do this, you have to put certain things as priorities in your life. And one of them is to learn to love and not to allow situations to enter into your life that stop you from loving. Stubbornness is the opposite of love. I can't love you until you do this. And I won't love you until you do this. I won't love you until you change the way you are. This comes from little things to much bigger things. But unconditional love doesn't have conditions. It's able to love for the sake of God. Our teacher, my teacher, treated everyone equally. Whether you were with him for years or you just met him, he embraced you and he gave you his love. This did a number of things for us. One, it softened up our hard exteriors. He had drawn a painting one time of a rocky mountain, and there was a fissure. The mountain began to crack, and love is what cracked the mountain, and he called it the Rocky Mountain of the heart. And love has to crack the hard-hearted, the Rocky Mountain of the heart, and the heart begins to melt. We need to begin to melt. Water continues to run and finds its way everywhere. It doesn't get stopped. Love should be the same way. It should just flow, and it shouldn't be stopped. We should not be creating dams to stop our love. We should learn how to allow our love to flow. It changes who we are. It changes the way we are. And it changes the way we see things and the way others see us. I often tell this story. I'll make it short. Two princesses who were twins came into a town, and they really despised each other. And they were both very beautiful, and they were always fighting about which one was the prettiest. And one of them was a very kind person, and one of them was evil. And they were in their carriage, and they drove into a town, and one of them said to the other, all right, let's finish this argument. We'll let this town decide which one of us is the most beautiful. And they stopped and got out of the carriage, and everybody knew who they were because of the carriage and because of their reputation. And they said, we've decided to let this town decide which of the two of us is the most beautiful. And people became frightened and didn't know what to do, so they ran to the old wise man in the town and told him the story. And he said, all right, I'll come and I'll settle this. So he came about a half hour, and he sat in front of the two ladies, the two princesses, the twins, and he said, okay, the town has chosen me to decide. And he said, I want the two of you to walk towards me. And they did. He said, now turn around and walk away from me. And they did. Then he said, now come towards me. And they did. He said, walk away from me. And they did. And he did this for about 20 minutes. And then he said, finally, I've decided. You are both equally beautiful. One is beautiful going away, and one of you is beautiful coming. Now, here's the question. Are we more beautiful leaving, or are we more beautiful coming? All of these stories are about you and me. They're not about other people. They just seem to be about other people. But they're all about us. And we have to decide who we want to be. And this requires incredible concentration and focus. We cannot do many of these things unless we are cognizant of what we are trying to do. So what does focus do? It sets an intention. And focus follows up on that intention. And then we become determined to do those things that we intended. And this is a constant reaffirmation that has to happen every day. The books are full of stories of wise men who had been on the path for years and years and years, and then something happened and they fell off the path. So, staying on this path is not an automatic. It's something that requires concentration and focus and determination and steadfastness every day of our lives. It's said that the path is as sharp as the blade of a sword and as thin as a hair. Well, imagine what a tightrope walker goes through as he's going across his tightrope. There has to be immense concentration there, immense focus. You never lose sight of your goal. And one of Satan's great tools in this world is to get you distracted. If he can get you into a conversation, it's over. He's accomplished what he wants to accomplish. Once he can put some doubt into you, doubt enough that you're willing to discuss it, he's beginning to win his victory. If we had straight concentration and straight focus, and we were approached by someone who doubted the truth or doubted the path and wants to try to convince us of that, we would be able, if we were focused, to do what the Quran says to do in these situations. Say, you go your way and I'll go mine, and end it. Don't get involved in it. This isn't a matter for discussion, because there are many people in the world who don't understand. And the ones who don't understand want you to understand the way they understand. Everybody wants you to think like them. Everybody wants you to be in their club. What the religions do. Every religion comes to you with the first line. If you want to get to God, this is the only way to go. The Baptists say salvation is only through Jesus. The Muslims say salvation is through Muhammad. The Jews say that to gain salvation, you need to become Jewish. The Hindus say that salvation is through the path of Shiva. Everyone says that salvation is through what they have been taught. Now, religions have become institutions, and the most important thing for an institution to do is maintain the institution. And what do you need to do to maintain the institution? Get a lot of adherents. Get people to join. So they're constantly pushing what can happen if you join. But there's an inherent line in there. There's an inherent lie in that kind of thinking. At the end of Christian crusades, and you may see them on television, they'll say, everybody who's born again, come forward, and we'll all be born again together. Like walking down an aisle will transform you. I once asked my teacher the question, is there a chosen people? And he answered me, and he said, yes, there is a chosen people. The ones who choose God, God chooses them back. So it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu. What matters is, what is your relationship with God? But what happens in many of these groups is, they have determined that everybody who's not one of them are not real people. They have determined that everyone who is not one of them has to be converted to the way they see things. And if they're not converted, they can't be saved. The Sufi is tolerant and leaves others alone and accepts that God has sent messages to everyone and that everyone has been given a pathway to him, and you shouldn't interfere with them. You'll help people who ask for help, but you don't push yourself on other people. This would have done away with, if people had listened to it, to thousands of years of war between religions and between different faiths, each of them thinking that if they could conquer the other one with the sword, they somehow prevailed in God's kingdom. Well, for starters, God's kingdom isn't here. And secondly, you don't get to God's kingdom by killing other people. And everybody needs to realize this. This path has many phases to it. The first phase is the phase of the womb. You're trapped inside your mother's womb. And depending on how long the month is in your calendar, you're either there for 9 and 10 or 10 months. Then you get out of the jail of the womb, and you enter into the jail of your mother. You become attached to her, and you really can't do anything without her. Sometime a little bit after that, the father gets involved, and then you're in the jail of your mother and father. Then they send you to school, and then you're in the jail of school, and you have to listen to them and do what they say and adhere to their rules and their regulations. And then you may go on to university, and you go to the jail of the university. Then you get a job, and you're involved in the jail of the job. When do you reach freedom? And how do you reach freedom? And what is the freedom from all of the various jails that this world captures you in? Freedom comes through learning to disattach your personal being, your emotions, and your sense of self-worth from what you do and how you do it. Personal freedom comes from beginning to understand that this path, after a certain number of years, ends. And everything that we've accumulated on this path ends for us. People talk about, when is the time of destruction coming? And somebody said, which destruction are you talking about, yours or mine? And that's the reality. Everybody talks about the destruction of the world, yet their own destruction is imminent. And people don't talk about their own destruction. And people have funny ways of looking at their life and what's going to happen. Many people walk around saying, well, the Messiah is going to come, the Mahdi is going to come, and he's going to save us all. How many millions and millions of people have died waiting for the Messiah and waiting for the Mahdi? They've given up their lives and thinking they could do whatever they wanted because somebody was going to come to save them. There was a group in Pennsylvania or New York State, I think it was New York State, called the Shakers. And this lady, whose name I don't remember, was Mary something, had a vision that everybody had to become their own Messiah. Everybody had to get to the point where they could save themselves. And by the way, until the Messiah comes, that's the position we should all take. We have to save ourselves, and inshallah, if the Messiah comes, great. But in the interim, we have some work to do here. And that work is to save ourselves. Now, there are two deaths that we deal with in this existence. One death is the finality of the body. When the body stops working and gives up, and it doesn't support life anymore. The second is the death that the Sufis talk about, which is to die before death while you're still in this life. And what does that mean, to die before death? Well, there's a ritual in Islam called Hajj. In Hajj, all the men wear something called an ihram. An ihram is a set of two towels, one over the shoulder and one around the waist. And it's a death shroud. The women dress, most part, in white ubayas, which are white coverings, which is a woman's death shroud. And before you go on Hajj, you're supposed to put all your worldly affairs in order, write your will, and get ready for death. Now, most people don't die going to Hajj. If they did, they'd probably stop going. But they don't. So, when they come back, after they've made all of these arrangements, they go back into their life. But what does it mean to die before death? Well, the world has all kinds of influences on us. And we react in different ways to all of these influences. If we can somehow turn down that reactive nature that we have so that all of the things that come at us no longer affect us, if we can take that thing inside of us that desires everything that we see and turn that down so the desire stops, we begin to become dead to the world in this waking body. And this takes a kind of supreme focus, because desire has an interesting way of sneaking up on you. And unless you're conscious and aware of these things through your daily life, they'll grab you, you'll fall asleep, and 15 years later you'll wake up and go, oh my God, 15 years went by since the last time I thought about the truth. Or 5 years went by. Or 2 days went by. But time went by. In some sects of Sufism, they do a 40-day retreat underground. They build a cavern in the ground that you walk into, and there's a door, and you go in, and once or twice a day they give you some food and some water, but it's dark in there, and it's soundless in there. So you are without hearing and without sight, which gives you an opportunity to try and ask the question, who am I, without outside interference? The world is constantly throwing images at you and throwing sensory images, sounds at you. In the cavern, you are without sensory input for an extended period of time, and you get to begin to understand what you are like without sensory input. What is the essence of you? What is at the core of you? Now, when death occurs, all of these senses fall away. So that 40-day period is a introduction to death and an introduction to self-knowledge. So we don't do these kinds of things anymore, but we can try to deprive ourselves of reaction to sensory input. We can try and begin to understand that desire is driven by a need that we have for what? What is the need that drives desire? Where does the need for desire come from? And desire and the mind are very closely interconnected. The mind comes up with all these ideas. People who are considered insane or schizophrenic have thoughts that are beyond the normally accepted rational interplay between people, and they do them. I have a friend who's schizophrenic, and he jumped off a bridge. And I said, why? And he said, my head told me to do it. And that's what happens to these people. Their mind controls them. Well, we all have a mind. And the question is, to what extent does this mind or the intellect control us? You see, the intellect has a limited capacity, and we have to understand that. The world wants to think that the intellect can understand anything and everything, and it's not true. The intellect's capacity is limited. But if we believe that the intellect can know everything, then we'll also believe that what the intellect comes up with has validity to it. And we need to understand that the intellect is a tool to help us make our way through the world, but it's not a tool to take us to God. The intellect is a critic, and the intellect doubts. The heart loves without doubting. The heart is a different mechanism with a different ability than the intellect. The heart has the ability to love and the ability to rise above the world. The heart transcends the world. The heart is not caught up in the needs that the mind is caught up in the world. And if you can tune your mind down and tune your heart up, you can become transcendent. your needs begin to go away, and love and compassion begin to overwhelm you. Once compassion enters into your being, and once you understand the nature of compassion, you change. Now, when we talk about God, the description that we're given of God is in a book called the Asmaul Husna, which gives us the 99 different names of God. And all of these are His qualities. Now, God is without shape and form. Well, His qualities are also without shape or form. You can't weigh compassion. You can't weigh love. You can't weigh mercy. But if you look at the world and you see mercy in action, you can see the tremendous effect that it has on the world and on people. So there are things that are not elemental and not physical that have effect in this world. And if you learn how to love, and if you transfer your intention to God and ask Him to allow you to understand Him and to take the veils away from you that are trapped within this world, He will send His qualities through you. Imagine Allah's qualities in your being that you are able to disseminate into the world. You become God's hands and God's feet. You can do His work on this earth. My teacher was asked one time, he used to come back between Sri Lanka and America, and they asked him one time when he went away to Sri Lanka if he was going to come back to America. And his answer was, if God needs a microphone in America, I'll come back. He understood very clearly that he was a conduit, not for himself, but for reality. And that's the highest station we can rise to become a conduit for the truth, to become pure enough that truth comes through us. If you can reach that level, if you can die before death, then judgment is not something that you go through, because you've already purified yourself and judged yourself. We need to be able to focus in that way and to understand in that way. When great acts of unity are done in this world, when great acts of loyalty are done in this world, they're recognized by the heavens and by all the angels. There's the story of Abu Bakr, who the Prophet asked for charity because they were going to go onto a campaign and he needed money. And Umar came forward and gave half. And then Abu Bakr came forward and said, I give everything. And the Prophet said, who's going to support you and your family? And he said, I rely on my God and my Prophet to support me and my family. And days went by, and Abu Bakr wasn't around. And the Prophet sent somebody to see Abu Bakr and find out why he wasn't there and to get him over there. So they went, and Abu Bakr lived a little distance from where the Prophet lived. They knocked on Abu Bakr's door and said, why haven't you been here? And the Prophet's asking for you. He said, well, when he asked me to give charity, I gave everything. All that I'm left with is a small cloth for my wife and I to wear when we pray, but it's not enough to go out into public with. And the man said to Abu Bakr, he said, well, you better figure something out because the Prophet's calling for you. So he went into his backyard, and there was a palm tree. And you know the leaves that a palm has, they're called fronds. And he made a skirt out of palm fronds and began to walk towards the prophet. Meanwhile, Gabriel came to see the prophet and said to him, I have a message for you to give Abu Bakr. And the prophet said, what's the message? He said, tell Abu Bakr that if he is pleased with his Lord was pleased with him. And the prophet said, I will surely give him that message. But first, Gabriel, I have to ask you a question. Why are you wearing a skirt of palm fronds? And he said, not only I am wearing a skirt of palm fronds, all of the angels in heaven are wearing skirts of palm fronds in honor of Abu Bakr. Divinity recognizes the things that people do and acknowledges them. When Abu Bakr finally came back, the prophet said to him, Gabriel came with a message for you. He said to tell you that if you are pleased with your Lord is pleased with you. And Abu Bakr said, I am certainly pleased with my Lord. And he began to whirl. And that was the beginning of the whirling dervishes. The point is that can we bring ourselves to the point where the angels recognize us? Or is the world more important than being recognized by angels? Are our possessions more important than being recognized by angels? Are our possessions, is our attachment to the world more important than having the resonance of Allah go through our system so that it can be given out to the world? These hands can walk love around. These feet can walk love around. This mouth can speak of love. We need to become involved in that. Each of us can do our bit. Each of us are meant to do our bit. And it's available for each of us. Never think that you're too small for Allah. Allah created you. He's your Father, and He wants only the best for you. And the best for you is to become like Him. Our teacher told us all the time, become like me. He didn't say that as a joke. He meant it. Of course, a lot of people didn't quite get it, but he meant it. And then he gave us the example of what it was like to become that way. We should all strive to become pure. We should all strive to love Allah and love humanity for the sake of Allah. We should all focus on understanding that truth. Halaj, a great Sufi, said, Anal Haq, which means I am reality. And what did he mean by He is reality? He meant that Allah was allowing reality to come through him. Allah was allowing compassion to come through him. And he felt that happening. And he wanted others to understand that that was available. Ketubs have been sent into this earth. These are high purified people to show us manifestations of God's qualities in the flesh so that we can see them and we can react to them and become like them. May that happen for each of us. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.